Thank you. Today I will be talking to you about multicellular social bacteria and the importance of the environment in its life cycle. Okay, so multicellularity in bacteria is awesome because single individual cells can aggregate and form multicellular robust structures. Also, bacteria can switch back and forth between a multicellular and a unicellular lifestyle, and sometimes because of an environmental variable. And one beautiful example is the fruiting body formation in myxobacteria at starvation. So at this process, individual cells organize into complex collective behaviors that can give rise to multicellular 3D structures. For example, in this case, branched or spherical structures depending on the species. But if just for a minute we think in the very first steps to the transition to the multicellularity, then we can think how do collective dynamics unfold from individual cellular agents. And to study this question, we use Myxococcus santus, which is a soil bacterium which behavior depends on the condition of nutrient availability. So when nutrients are available in the substrate, when nutrients are available in the substrate, cells swarm outwards, forming colonies like the yellow one. However, when nutrients become scarce in the substrate, cells now move inwards, forming these increasingly growing mounds, in which eventually some of the cells will differentiate into resistant spores. These 3D multicellular structures are called fruiting bodies, and within fruiting bodies, cells exhibit addition, intercellular communication, cellular differentiation, but also development of fruiting bodies occur as developmental stereotypic structures, always in given times and a given spatial scale. Okay, so to study the transition to collectivity, we study how cells move and organize at the single cell level scale. And at this scale, we can describe and quantify cells' size, shape, velocity, spatial recurrence, and cell-cell interactions. With spatial recurrence, I mean that cells do not explore randomly all the space, but they tend to follow trails that previous cells has passed. Experimental systems could be as simplest as this slide. However, given that myxos naturally habit soil, experimental designs could be enriched if we considered also environmental variables, such as considering soil, substrate topography, stiffness, temperature variation, cellular density, and cell-substrate interactions. And that's what we do. We study, or we try to approach ecologically relevant systems to, in turn, approach ecological and developmental aspects of development. And more specifically, we are interested in studying mechanical properties of the cell-substrate interaction, given that myxo cells move by gliding over surfaces. And we then want to study how these mechanical properties of the cell-substrate interaction induce phenotypic plasticity and also shape developmental trajectories. And this is how they look like. Cells are in white, and you can see that single cells, which are individual cells, move back and forth until they contact another cell. So they start forming the first collective structures, like you can see down there, like thin stream of cells. And after some hours, you can see that the whole population of cells has modified their behavior, and now there are another new structures emerging with different behaviors. You can see now like droplet-like structures with a different way of moving around. So one thing to highlight is that during development, which I think that it's not like a linear process, a different collective structure emerges, and we can distinguish them by their morphology, size, their displacement, and also their border permanency. And this is very interesting because individual collective dynamics unfold larger scale patterns. So understanding how these individual cell structures emerge, split, and the thing opposed to split. Studying these individual structures and their dynamics, we can then understand how multicellular foreign bodies are formed, and moreover, we can understand more larger phenotypic scale patterns. For example, the foreign bodies population scale at those larger area. And this is interesting because at given environmental conditions, we can see that the whole population scale phenotype is robust, as you can see in these patterns, and it's also replicable for those specific conditions. But how this whole foreign bodies population pattern is formed, we can go back to, again, the foreign body scale. This is another experiment, and here I am showing how foreign bodies, which are these black spots at 96 hours, are formed in an homogeneous substrate. However, approaching soil, we placed silica inert particles to make a more heterogeneous substrate. And you can see that at 96 hours, foreign bodies are not formed. It means that, in a sense, development is being restricted in this condition. So why modifying the substrate heterogeneity is restricting development? Let's go back to the single scale level. So here you can see as black dots, these are the inert particles, and white lines are the cells. I know. Okay, I cannot see here the video, but what we could see is that around the particles there is a shade, which is a capillary meniscus, and this capillary meniscus attract surrounding cells, and they sequester them, decreasing the local density, the local cellular density, and this may be enough to restrict development. And finally, I want to say that the physical environment of the cells, it's not given, but cells by themselves determine these environmental variables. So as I told you, cells do not tend to explore the whole space, but they use trails that other cells have made or have constructed. So cells themselves bias where and how they move, and they encounter each other to form multicellular structures. And finally, you can see here in green individual cells, which are disconnected at all at 0 hours. But as time passes, you can see in yellow trails that cells have made in the substrate. So you can see that now the whole space is connected by cells, but also by their trails, so that they bias how they encounter each other. And the conclusions are that physical and biological aspects of the environment, for example, stiffness, topography, and density, partially determine multicellular development with no trivial and multiscale effects. Also, that structures observed during mixo-development are diverse in morphology and behavior, and their frequency exhibit temporal sequences that can be affected by cellular density. In turn, changes in the frequency of certain structures are associated with the way the whole populations explore the space. And finally, that the substrate is constantly shaped by cells through the formation of trails, creating a loop of organism-environment interactions with potentially relevant evolutionary implications. And that was all. Thank you to my colleagues and my students. Thank you.